You know, sometimes I think it would be almost funny to show you the things that I trim out at the beginning and end of these recordings because I do all these weird random things so I can find where I'm actually beginning. And so I have all these little clips of me doing things like this and I don't know, just some dumb crap. And it'd be kind of funny. But after I publish them to YouTube, more often than not, I actually delete them from the computer so they don't take up space. So I don't know if I have them. Would be kind of fun to do a compilation of the randomness of what I've actually cut out. But anyway, this PowerPoint, not super duper duper long, and so I'm going to try really hard not to ramble too much. We know it's still going to happen because it's me. So, gas exchange. Health risks of smoking. Yes, this is that PowerPoint. I'm going to sit here and talk about how bad it is to smoke. It's been linked to thousands of substances in tobacco smoke, including nicotine, tar, carbon monoxide, and dozens of chemicals that are known to cause cancer. I mean, we know smoking is not good for you. We all know this. E-cigarettes are the newer thing, or vaping. Battery-powered devices, they vaporize a liquid that contains the nicotine and stuff, so then you can still actually absorb the nicotine, the addictive part, without burning the tobacco. Then they've added flavoring liquids in order to make them taste all kinds of lovely, because people are like, oh yeah, it's not really like smoking, it tastes like cherries. But in reality, it's still really, really bad, just so you know. Ta-da! How much do we know about the health effects of e-cigarettes? And I still think it's hilarious that they're just saying e-cigarettes. It's a brand new textbook. They should have upped the game and gone ahead and talked about vaping, because when they first came out, they were called e-cigarettes. But I guess it's kind of like when your grandparents or your parents are trying to sound with it, and they're trying to use terms that they think are popular, and in reality, it's like way back. I don't know. It amuses me. But anyway, what do we actually really know about the health? So we are going to talk big ideas, mechanisms of gas exchange, the human respiratory system, and transport of gases in the human body. And I have slimmed this PowerPoint down something fierce because I don't think you really care all that much about how a grasshopper breathes, just so you know. And yes, that's part of what I cut out. Gas exchange is the interchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between an organism and its environment. So it provides oxygen for cellular respiration and removes the waste product, which is carbon dioxide. This is just like when we covered it, say it with me now, Bio 123, when we talked about cellular respiration. So this will be how that happens, not just why it happens, but how. So we have three phases. We have breathing, which is and then transport of gases by the circulatory system. This is your blood bringing everything around. And I talked about this, but I can't remember if it was in a PowerPoint or if it was actually in person. I really have no idea at this point. Exchange of gases with body cells. So this is where the body tissues take up the oxygen from the blood, and then they release the carbon dioxide back into the blood. So it's just doing that as it goes through the whole body. Humans cannot survive for more than a few minutes without oxygen. Why? I really wish I could have somebody answer this. Because our cells need a steady supply. That's how everything's happening. When we have cell death, we end up with actual death. So the longer you go without oxygen, the more cells that are dying. When you don't have your cells working, you don't have the energy, you have the organism die. So there you go. So what is involved in our gas exchange? Well, we have our breathing, the lungs, the heart, the blood vessels, and all the transportation, because it takes it around everywhere into the individual cells. So what happens is you breathe in the oxygen, it goes into your lungs. That's where the oxygen goes into the blood goes into the heart, which pumps it out to your body. It carries it all around your body through the veins and arteries away. So the arteries are what takes it away from the heart. and then it goes out into these little capillaries. And so that would be like the tips of your fingers, your nose, the little red spots here. Those are burst capillaries. And I say here because I know I have them. I don't think everybody does, but I know I do. But that's where it's diffusing the oxygen out there, but then through the diffusion osmosis of the carbon dioxide, that comes back into the edges of the capillaries, back into the veins, and back to the heart. So now by the time it returns to the heart, it has dropped off the oxygen, but it has picked up all the carbon dioxide. So then it goes into the lungs and then into the heart. And so it's like dropping off the carbon dioxide and then cleaning and then picking up more oxygen and then scooching along. So there you go. Respiratory surfaces must be thin and moist for diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide to occur. Some animals use their entire skin as a gas exchange organ. So think of a salamander. They're they're wet, they're moist, and that's so they can just take it all in. You have, I point like this like you can see it. But I was going to say the grasshopper that I was talking about a moment ago. No, there's no grasshopper over there, thankfully. Most animals, we have gills or a tracheal system or lungs. So a fish has the gills, and then that's letting it all come across and catch it. We've got our lungs. So how does the structure of the respiratory surface of a gill or a lung fit its function? Well, moist and thin allows the gases to easily diffuse across them into or out of the closely associated capillaries. Might be highly branched or subdivided, that's what our stuff is highly branched, providing a large surface area for exchange. Gills will absorb the oxygen dissolved in the water. So for the fish, we've got the gills, and as it goes across here, it picks up the oxygen, and then when it comes back, counter current, that's removing the carbon dioxide, takes it right back out. So here's your picture. Here's the big thing. I used to have a different picture. It showed real ones, but I kept these because, I don't know, cartoon is easier for me. What most people think of as the gill is actually the gill cover. So it's that little part that goes like that on the fish. That's actually the cover. If you peel that back, you will see what looks similar to this. Those are the actual gills. And so again, it's called a counter current exchange. So it's as the water goes like this, that's where it's getting the stuff. So the fish, if you've ever noticed, a bunch of fish swim, they're like, that's kind of how they're breathing. It's because they're pulling the water through and then it comes back out. And so that's how it's transferring its gases. Suppose that the blood in the gill shown above flows in the same direction as the water instead of counter to it. What would be the maximum percentage of the water's oxygen the gill could extract? I think this is funny that it says, this is a challenging one. It may help to sketch it out. I don't even know how you would sketch this out, to be honest. It really just breaks down to osmosis. It wants to be balanced, so it would go 50%. That's literally it. Like I said, I don't know what you would sketch out. The book says it, I don't know. But if you remember when we did the shellless egg lab in Bio 123, talked about osmosis and we talked about homeostasis, and we talked, you put the egg in the sugar water. When it was soaked in 20% sugar water, that's what became its norm. So when you put it in any other dish, the water either flowed out of or into it. And so that's literally all this is. If it was not doing the counter current, then it would just try to balance, and so it would only be able to get half the oxygen. So that's it. There are two big advantages to breathing air. I kind of like it, you know. I once told a doctor about trying to get the right medicine for the asthma and everything because I told them that I've decided I kind of like breathing. I'm a little addicted to it. And it was hilarious because they're like, you're... And then they just started laughing. But you know, yeah, there you go. So air contains a much higher concentration of oxygen than water does. And air is much lighter and easier to move than water. Can you imagine if everywhere we went we had to carry water with us just so we could breathe? That would be crazy. Tracheal system of insects with respiratory surfaces at the tips of tiny branching tubes inside the body. What this breaks down to is, if you saw, again, a grasshopper or a cricket, if you've ever actually looked closely, they have these tiny little dots down their sides. That's how they breathe. They're not going like us. It's these little dots. It's the trachea. You've got these tubes, and that's just how the gas exchange takes place. That's it. There's a picture in your book about it. In what fundamental way does the process of gas exchange in insects differ from that in both fishes and humans? Well, theirs is just, that's it. It's just these little holes. The circulatory system of insects is not involved in transporting gases to and from the body cells. Yeah, that's why. Fish and humans, we have the actual closed circulation, the circulatory system. And so since all of our stuff is in individual veins and arteries, when our gas exchange has to reach out, branch out, so it can get into the cells to, or into the blood to move around. If you have ever cut open a frog, like, if you took bio in high school or something and you dissected a frog, and I got all distracted for a second going, what grade was I in when I dissected a frog? Because I quit school after the 9th grade, so it had to be by then. But I can't remember for the life of me if it was 7th, 8th, or 9th. I don't know. But anyway, if you ever did that, when you cut open the frog, you saw veins and arteries. Don't cut open a human, but we have veins and arteries. If you cut open a cricket, you don't see veins and arteries. Theirs is more of an open system than a closed system, and so that's the big difference. Colonization of land by vertebrates was one of the pivotal milestones in the history of life. So pretty much when things with backbones climbed up out of the water, that made a huge difference. Evolution of legs from fins might be the most obvious change in body design, because when you go from this to this makes a big difference. It makes it where you can get farther. However, getting it where you could breathe without taking it from the water, huge, like huge. So the whole skeleton had to adjust to accommodate that. So this is showing you recreation of how the living mammal might have looked. So these are the bones that they found. They can see the little fins, the neck, eyes on the top of the skull. So this is what they believe it looked similar to. So we do actually have tetrapods. Tetra for 4, pods, feet. We do actually have fish that have legs like this. And yes, I'm saying legs instead of fins because it works like our legs. And it's actually really cool. I say seriously, Google it. You'll see entire groups of these fish that are like, and they're walking along. Human respiratory system. Diaphragm. Anyone who's ever been in choir or chorus, they've done any kind of singing, or if you've had a relative or anybody who's teaching you how to project your voice, whether it's in theater, debate, or whatever, they tell you from the diaphragm, and then they tell you to sit up straight from the diaphragm. That's what they're talking about. So the diaphragm separates the abdominal cavity from the thoracic cavity and helps ventilate the lungs. There is this really cool Bill Nye, the science guy, lab, and what he does is shows how the diaphragm helps inflate the lungs. And you can take a 2-liter bottle, you cut off the bottom, you attach like a big rubber, something like part of an old balloon there, but then through the top of the bottle you put a balloon and you cap it. When you pull this down, which would be like pulling the diaphragm down, it helps inflate the lungs. And then push, it brings it down. So you can actually do this and see how the diaphragm helps make your lungs work. In mammals, the air is inhaled through the nostrils into the nasal cavity, filtered by hairs and mucous surfaces, warmed and humidified, and sampled for odors. That's why we have our senses. We can smell because that helps us identify specific things. Warmed and humidified, that's so when it gets to our lungs, it works better. If you've ever noticed a difference between trying to breathe hot air versus room temperature air versus cold air, you can actually feel the difference in your lungs. Filtered by hairs and mucus surfaces. That's because there's a lot of junk in the air. And so your nasal hairs, your nostril hairs, and the mucous membranes are there to trap the things that it doesn't want to go into your lungs. So if you've ever worked in an area that's really gross, really dirty, I've been an extruder operator and a mechanic, and I also used to clean public buildings in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. All three of those surrounded by ick. The mechanic was by far the worst. As a mechanic, I would get done from work and I would be like that, and it would just be black coming across me. It was really gross, but that's because my nose was doing its job. The hairs are there to try to filter the larger particles. The mucus is there to trap the smaller particles. That's why you end up with, boogers and stuff like that. That's your body trapping what it doesn't want in your lungs and kicking it out. Inhaled air then passes through the pharynx and larynx, trachea, bronchial, and bronchioles to the alveoli. I don't know why I was messing that up. Alveoli. So the trachea, the bronchi, and the bronchioles, these are what's involved with a lot of issues like asthma, because asthma has two different types. I have both. But asthma has it where sometimes the trachea closes up, and so it just like starts to close up, and that's when you can sound like if you ever watch Toy Story, this is how I always describe it, as Wheezy from Toy Story, the little penguin, and you squish him and he goes makes the weirdest noise because he doesn't really squeak anymore. On my not so good days, I will inhale and it sounds just like that toy, but that's when the trachea is closing down. Then you have it where the branching off is not actually transferring things properly. It's not quite right. So you've got the closing off, you've got the spasming. So when you have the actual attack, that's it spasming, it's opening and closing, and that's why the so yeah, lungs have a whole lot involved. And then they have these little hair-like structures that are there to also filter and also transfer everything. And the hair-like structures are what you're damaging. That's the cilia they're talking about. The hair-like structures are the parts that you're damaging when you smoke, as well as obviously putting straight up toxins in there. So how does the structure of alveoli match their function? Well, thin, moist epithelium across where dissolved oxygen and carbon dioxide can easily diffuse. This is just basically where everything's taking place. This is where you're getting the oxygen for your body. This is where you are getting rid of the stuff your body does not need. Again, this is just showing you nasal cavity. You're inhaling it going down, comes down, branches all the way out. Evidence accumulated from thousands of studies has shown that smoking causes lung cancer and other respiratory diseases. No joke, because if your lungs are there in order to take in the good oxygen, to spread it through your body for health, and to take all the toxins and have you exhale it. If you are filling it with the bad, that is taking up space away from the good. Plus, smoking any product whatsoever is literally burning the cilia in your lungs. It's burning the little, hair-like structures. So smoking anything at all, not good for you. Not at all. Breathing is ventilation of the lungs through alternating inhalation and exhalation. So inhalation, exhalation, and now we can breathe. So in humans and other mammals, ventilation occurs by negative pressure breathing. This is where air is pulled into the lungs. You have to pull it. It doesn't automatically happen. You have to do that. But when you exhale, it's just kind of relaxing. So there you go. I talked about this in class when I was talking about the skeleton, about the ribs. The rib muscles and the diaphragm expand, which reduces the air pressure of the alveoli and then draws the air into the lungs. Explain why inhalation is an active process requiring work, where exhalation is usually positive. Because inhalation uses muscle contraction and exhalation occurs when it relaxes. That's why, again, if you're told to hold your breath, you consciously go, and then you hold it. But as soon as you stop trying to hold it, when you relax, that's when it all goes away. So there you go. Positive, negative. Again, inhalation, you take it in and diaphragm pulls down, ribs expand, so everything's opening to make space to fill those lungs with air. And then when you let go of everything, it all, and then the air comes back out. Breathing control centers in the brain coordinate breathing with body needs by sensing and responding to the pH of the cerebral spinal fluid, which indicates carbon dioxide levels in the blood. A drop in the blood pH triggers an increase in the rate and depth of breathing. What this means is when there's too much carbon dioxide in your body, it's like, holy crap, we need some more oxygen, and it's making you breathe more, making you sometimes breathe faster, taking deeper breaths because it needs more oxygen. This is why someone who smokes, again, smokes any product whatsoever, but when somebody is smoking, notice that their breathing is shallower because it's constantly trying to get rid of some of the junk, and it's trying to take in more oxygen. And so it's happening more often. This is why if you think of a smoker going up a flight of stairs, they get to the top of the stairs and they're winded and they're like, that's the body trying desperately to take in more oxygen. Oh, I think I just answered your checkpoint question. How is the increased need for oxygen during exercise accommodated by the breathing control centers? Yeah, there you go. I just told you. It's because with the exercise, your body, the cells are releasing more carbon dioxide into the blood. That lowers the pH of the blood. The blood goes, holy crap, I need more oxygen. And so it's increasing the breathing rate, trying to get more oxygen. So see, I did just answer that. So homeostatic control of breathing. Normal blood pH, everything's fine. As soon as it gets lower because carbon dioxide is rising, everything starts speeding up. Your heart speeds up, your blood pressure goes up, your head's like, your brain's like, holy crap. And so it's trying to speed you up. You start breathing more to get more oxygen in, more carbon dioxide out. There you go. Transport of gases in the human body. The heart pumps oxygen-poor blood to the lungs, and in the lungs, it will pick up oxygen and drop off the carbon dioxide. The oxygen-rich blood returns to the heart and then is pumped to body cells where it drops off the oxygen and picks up the carbon dioxide. When we are doing the circulatory system, which is almost here, we will be talking about the heart and the path it takes through the heart. You will need to know this. We have so much material to cover this quarter that in Bio 124 you are doing all of your tests. Gosh, I can't remember that word. You're doing all of your tests online except the final. So on the final exam, you better be ready to draw out how it goes through the heart. And I also have papers for you for practicing this. I'm just giving you the heads up now so you can start working on it. And my nursing majors, oh heck yeah, you better know it because you're going to need it down the road. Here's one of those weird cycle images they have for this textbook. It's just, again, trying to show you that you're inhaling the oxygen. It goes through and it's dropping off the oxygen and picking up the carbon dioxide, spreading it out to the tissues and everything, and then it comes back up. And then it lets go of the carbon dioxide so it can repeat the cycle. Mixture of gases such as air exerts pressure. Each kind of gas as a mixture accounts for a portion of the total pressure of the mixture. So each gas has something called a partial pressure. We kind of covered this a little bit when we did that one chapter of chemistry in Bio 123. Most animals transport oxygen bound to proteins called respiratory pigments. For us, we always talk about the iron-containing hemoglobin. That's the main thing you will have heard of for humans. It's used in almost all vertebrates and many invertebrates, transports oxygen and carbon dioxide, and buffers the blood. If you don't remember what blood buffering is, seriously, dude, you need to look back at your bio 1, 2, 3. You knew I was saying it. You had to know I was going to say it. Fetal hemoglobin. Do you remember what fetal is? It's that building baby. Okay, attracts oxygen more strongly than an adult hemoglobin. So this enhances the oxygen transfer from the maternal blood to the placenta. So at birth, the rising carbon dioxide in the fetal blood stimulates the breathing control center and initiates breathing. This is why, no, the baby is not actually breathing in utero. It's not until after it's born, because the umbilical cord and the placenta is doing a phenomenal job with transferring it. This is also why when someone who is pregnant is smoking, I want to smack them upside the head. It is bad. And again, I don't care what it is you're smoking. All smoke is bad for your lungs, bad for your blood. When a woman is pregnant and she is smoking, she's literally keeping oxygen from that developing baby. So there you go. This is the way it works. Baby's growing inside mommy. We've got the uterus, we've got the amniotic fluid, but what we're looking at here is the umbilical cord and the placenta. The umbilical cord is what's attaching the baby to the mommy, and the placenta is what's all around there. That's the main buffer point. So the placenta is absorbing everything from mom's circulatory system. So that's where all the oxygen is coming from. That's where all the nutrients are coming from. It's then put through the umbilical cord into the baby. The baby's body is doing what it's supposed to. It's transferring everything. It's working. It's learning how to do all that cell, the cell metabolism and the, I lost my word, cellular respiration. There you go. It's doing all of that. And so it's needing the oxygen to proceed with all of its functions and to build and build and build. So it's also making all these waste products. The waste products are then taken away through the umbilical cord, back into the placenta, back into mom, and then mom is able to exhale or pee out or whatever, depending on the waste product. So all of that is coming from mom. There you go. That is our respiratory system. Now, what I didn't cover here for the respiratory system, oh, never mind. Circulation. I cover more of the circulation. I talked about it some in class too, about smoking being bad for your circulation. So next up is circulation, and then I'm done making videos for you for this week, and then I can start prepping for next week. But I need to figure out what chapters I will have to do for next week. But until then, I'm done with this one. So circulation next up. See you in just a moment, because I will stand up. I'll do some quick pacing because holy crap, I can't handle sitting for so long. And, oh yeah, that's it. So peace out, man.